All right, welcome everybody. So the presentation today is brought to you by Wellness While We Work. And if you have any questions during the course of the presentation, please feel free to use the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. So today we're going to be talking about the Meet Well Guide. So this is a guide for making workplace wellness business as usual. I'm Lindsay Davidson. I'm a dietitian here at the Chatham-Kent Public Health Unit, and Chris Sherman is the health educator who will also be presenting with me. A little bit of background on workplaces. So 1 out of 2 people over the age of 18 in Chatham-Kent is considered overweight or obese. Most adults spend about 60% of their waking day at work, and we know from research that promoting healthy eating and reducing sedentary behavior can prevent various workplace costs. We also know that employees spend about 60% of their waking hours in the workplace. So for most workplaces, the main reason that most want to promote healthy lifestyles is to reduce the potential costs of the health-related illnesses. Employees spend a great deal of time in their workplaces. In addition, employees eat at least one meal during the workday and often access food from the workplace. Therefore, it's important to consider the type of food and beverages offered in the workplace if employers want to promote health. A little bit of overview about this guide. When you think of the word meeting, what comes to mind? For most people, it's basically sitting in a room, being inactive, often eating unhealthy foods, and hoping the meeting is worth your time that you're spending there. This is a guide you can use to improve your employees' health and allow participants to be more focused and engaged. By making health the easy choice at work, employers and participants are supported in their healthy living goals. This resource was created for anyone who wants to host meetings, conferences, or events that foster a healthier work environment and contribute to the development of a healthy workforce. It's intended to support you in fostering a healthy work environment when hosting meetings, conferences, or events. As an employer, you have a significant impact on your employees' health and wellness, as nearly half of most people spend their waking hours at work. The 4 main principles in this guide are move more, food for fuel, be green, and plan well.
Okay, so as Lindsay mentioned, and I'll just go back one here just before I bring up the chart, studies show that there's a strong relationship between the work environment and health behaviors of employees. Nearly half of most people's waking hours are spent at work, and for this, in this instance, it can mean many hours spent in meetings, teleconferences, workshops, or events. Meetings generally involve a lot of time sitting with little chance for movement, all of which negatively impact employee health. With the high rates of obesity, overweight, and preventable chronic diseases, workplaces can use resources like the Meet Well Guide to help create supportive working environments and develop a healthy workforce. To put this in context on how important physical activity is at work, here is just some interesting findings from a recent report from the Conference Board of Canada, where they've indicated, employers have reported that physical inactivity is a top contributor to workforce issues, second only to stress, which I'll touch on in a moment. So what is physical activity? And to put it simply, as defined by the World Health Organization, physical activity is any bodily movement produced by the skeletal muscles that uses energy. To simplify that even more, kind of 3 key points around physical activity: it requires energy, increases heart rate, speeds rate of breathing. This can involve structured activities like sports or exercise, or activities just of daily living. So how much physical activity do we need? And this is across the entire day, not just during work hours, but the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines for adults state that we need 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week in bouts of 10 minutes or more, and that the more physical activity provides greater health benefits. So now, how active are we? And again, this just gives a little bit of context and a little bit of background for everyone on the call right now. This is in terms of what percentage of the population actually meets the physical activity guidelines. And you'll see that there's 3 options there. Obviously, our ability to answer those are limited, so I'll give you the answer, but it's actually only 15% of adults in Canada meet the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines of 150 minutes per week. And what's more interesting is that 52% of people self-report they're active. So there's quite a difference between how we perceive how active we are and how much we are actually physically active. Now, looking at sedentary behavior, essentially this means time spent at rest, not including sleep. Most often, it's in the sitting position. It's important to note that sedentary behavior, or not moving, carries an independent health risk regardless of how active you are. For example, even if you are active for half an hour each day, let's say you go for a brisk walk or go for a jog, or maybe participate in an exercise or a fitness program, but you spend the other 12 hours of the day sitting or being sedentary at work, in your car, on the couch at home, you still carry an increased health risk, thus making it very important that employees try to move constantly throughout the day at regular intervals. And again, just to sum it up and put this in context, how sedentary are we? In terms of percentage of waking hours, Canadian adults spend 69% of our waking hours being sedentary. That's about 9.5 hours per day. And here's just a quick comparison using a taxi driver. This graph shows the average percentage of time in typical workday that a taxi driver spends being moderately active, which is in green, doing light physical activities, highlighted in yellow, and being sedentary, which is the red. Now, what is scary is when we compare that, the amount of sedentary time, to that of a recent stroke patient who's admitted to hospital. Their days are almost indistinguishable. This is scary as, again, we often think we're more active than we are. Although this is an example of a taxi driver and their job is highly sedentary by nature, it isn't that far off from other occupations that require sitting at a desk all day. Heavy equipment operators or truck drivers to spend several hours a day of their day sitting in a vehicle with limited opportunities for movement. And I should add that for the typical office worker, it's about 80% of the workday spent being sedentary, which, if we go back a previous slide there, compared to 69% of their free time. So we're more sedentary at work than we are even at home. So in terms of, we went through some of the individual benefits of being active. Now we'll go through a bit of the organizational benefits, and this just highlights a few of them. Reduced absenteeism. These are all based on research. So being active and having active employees translates into reduced absenteeism, both casual and LTD leaves, 50% improvement in presenteeism, increased productivity and job performance, reduced work-related injuries, reduced turnover, and as well several other intangible benefits such as improved corporate reputation, improved relationships between management and unions, and increased employee satisfaction and loyalty. Along with the organizational benefits and obviously the physical health benefits, there are also several mental health benefits that can be gained as well. And this, again, is all directly related to research and recent studies that show direct relationship between activity and decreased reporting of depression and anxiety, improved focus and attention, improved memory and thinking, improved mood and energy, and increased sleep. In terms of how physical activity impacts and allows people to deal with stress, this is just a neat little chart to kind of articulate that. Once anxiety and tension has reached a point, and everyone has a different threshold, but once it reaches a certain threshold, the limbic system, the old part of the brain, basically starts to take over. And many of you have probably heard of the fight or flight response, and this is where you get more of those impulse behaviors. What physical activity actually does is releases neurotransmitters, which turns on the part of the brain responsible for executive function. It allows for better attention, impulse control, and working memory. This restores the energy balance in the brain and allows for better self-regulation. So what can we do when we're looking at workplace health and creating that active culture? It really stems around two things. First and foremost would be to reduce sedentary behavior. And most often you can take your typical work routine and just ask the question, is sitting required? If you have a smaller group, say 2 to 3 people, meeting to brainstorm a project or solution to an issue, a walking meeting can be a great alternative. I know that we have walking meetings built in now as part of our Outlook calendar, so we can send walking meeting requests internally within the municipality. If you're meeting over the phone or by teleconference, using a headset or speakerphone will allow employees to stand up during conversation, move around a bit, pace back and forth. Even these incidental movements of just standing and sitting casually every few minutes is beneficial. The same with in-person meetings. There are chairs in every boardroom. It doesn't necessarily mean we need to use them. Hold a standing meeting or invite participants at the beginning of your meetings to stand or sit whenever they wish. Some may just stand and lean against a wall and then sit for a bit. Again, every little bit of activity is beneficial, and it'll also help keep their minds activated and engaged. Centralized office equipment, now not really meeting related, it's something that's often overlooked. By walking to centralized equipment such as printers, faxes, copiers, and those and different amenities, it encourages walking more and encourages more of that incidental movement throughout the day. It may only translate into a couple hundred steps, but again, it all adds up. A general rule of thumb as well is to get up and move for 2 to 3 minutes every half an hour, or if you have a meeting that's going half a day, every hour get up for 4 minutes and take a movement break. Even if you just get up, move around the room a bit and stretch. Again, it all adds up. In terms of creating an active culture, awareness and education are really the key. Making employees aware of the physical activity guidelines and the importance of reducing sedentary behavior. Walking, and I've starred this specifically, as it is really the easiest way to incorporate physical activity and the best option, especially for encouraging individuals who are usually very inactive. Organizing fitness or activity breaks, especially around longer meetings or events that run half or a full day. Consider as well the indoor-outdoor environment and try to take advantage of the opportunities that are provided. If you're spending half a day in a meeting, there's a nice trail or walking path close to the building, take advantage of it, get outside during one of the breaks and go for a walk. If you have limited space in a small meeting room or are crunched for time, simply encouraging everyone to get up and stretch, walk to the water fountain, or take a washroom break, even if they might not necessarily need one, just walking to the restroom and back, it interrupts the sedentary time, makes their day more active as a whole.
All right, so now moving into food for fuel. We know that at least less than 1% of the Canadian adults follow healthy eating recommendations. We know that employees eat at least one meal at work, and that healthy eating can prevent or reduce costs related to illness or disability in the workplace. Although there are many contributing factors, our food environment, so where we work, live, and play, has a key influence on our eating habits. What we eat and drink affects how well we feel and how healthy we are. We know from research that promoting healthy eating can prevent various workplace costs related to absenteeism, reduced productivity, increased insurance premiums, medical costs, prescription drug costs, as well as higher rates of injury, disability, and early retirement. We are surrounded by food every day, and what is made available has a great influence on what we choose to eat. Providing a work environment that supports health creates a culture that makes healthy eating the easy and natural choice. Typically, our approach for the last few decades has been educating individuals about healthy eating in order to encourage them to make the healthier choices themselves. The reality is, there are assumptions that go along with that eating behavior occurs as a result of rational and thoughtful choices, and that each individual has the capacity to resist tempting foods in order to make healthy choices over time. The problem with that, however, is that the problem with this approach is that there are many factors that all play a role and have an influence on our eating behaviors. It's not just as simple as willpower. Unfortunately, these occur below our conscious awareness, so individuals are not aware of the external influences on their personal behaviors. The first problem is related to psychological factors. Physiological factors. There are some foods that appear to have the ability to stimulate the reward system in the brain center, creating an addictive mechanism that helps to explain why people fail to make consistent healthy food choices. Unlike many other addictive substances, these ones are heavily advertised, inexpensive, widely available, and difficult to avoid. There's also the idea of willpower. The ability to resist is a limited resource that's found in the same part of the brain that controls functioning such as planning, learning, and processing stress. We know that people are not equipped to do more than one task at a time that requires this mental energy. For example, driving is impaired while texting on a cell phone. When people use this part of the brain to do their job, such as problem solving or having to deal with continuous stress, it means that there's less resistance to the tempting food around them. This helps to explain why when people are stressed, they tend to overeat and choose options that may not be as healthy for them. It is also believed that the brain relies on blood glucose as its energy source. When glucose levels are low, is going to be when people are most likely to make the decisions that are going to affect their food choices. For example, if you're going to be grocery shopping, when you're hungry, your blood glucose is already low, you're more likely to make those choices that are not as healthy for you. Physical activity is often seen as a good compensation option to make up for poor dietary choices. It's not as easy as that. We know that it doesn't make up for the nutrients that would be missing from many of the less healthy foods, and if that was really the case, then losing weight would be a lot easier than what it is. It's not as easy as what you take in and what you burn off when it comes to weight loss. Physical activity is important for a wide variety of reasons that have already been mentioned, but it's not the be-all and end-all to solving weight loss. There are a number of individual factors and external factors that influence what people choose to eat. People need to find, so first off, for individual factors, people need to find healthy food that tastes good to them. They need the knowledge and skills to help them choose and prepare healthy foods. However, also stress, mental health, fatigue, hunger, and time pressures can make people more vulnerable to making less healthy choices. One of the external factors that influence food is the availability. Often food is present when it's not required to be. This can increase the likelihood that people will eat when they don't need to. The nutritional quality of food that is available influences individual diet quality. It is less likely that employees will make a healthy choice in the workplace if the following conditions exist. If healthy food is not available, if healthy food options do not taste good, if healthy food is more expensive, and if healthy food requires more effort to obtain. Lastly, eating with others or being encouraged by others to eat can influence the type and amount of food that individuals eat as well. One of the biggest questions whenever you're having a meeting or event is food or beverage really necessary? When you're looking at making food choices for a meeting or an event, some of the things to keep in mind. You want to remember to provide alternatives for individuals with food allergies or special dietary needs. That's as simple as just asking people when they sign up, when they register, or when you're sending out an email if they have any of those special requirements, and incorporating them into what you're planning. If you're providing a meal, make sure that you're including 3 out of the 4 food groups. If you're providing a snack, 2 out of the 4 food groups. And one of the best things you can do is leave candy at home. So instead of leaving the little candy dish on the table or having it accessible, leave it at home, because out of sight is out of mind. When you're emphasizing foods, make sure that you're looking at fruits and vegetables at every snack or meal. That's a really easy way to ensure that you're getting lots of good nutrients. Put a focus on whole grains, whether it's your breads, pastas, or muffins. Look for protein-rich foods, including low-fat milk options, yogurt, cheese, lean meats, fish, eggs, beans, and legumes as well. Make sure that you're encouraging appropriate serving sizes. So rather than having extra large plates, have reasonable size bowls and cups. And make sure that you're always practicing safe food handling to ensure that you're not putting anyone at risk. All right. Key things to consider. When you're looking at beverages, tap water should be the #1 beverage offered at all times. Consider investing in water jugs to make it easier rather than having bottles of water available. That will help the environment as well. If you're worried that it will be boring, consider adding frozen fruit or slices of lemon or lime for flavoring, or have those on the side so that people can add those in later on. If you are offering juice at breakfast, make sure you're choosing 100% fruit or vegetable juice, not something that's listed as a beverage, punch, cocktail, or drink, as these contain a lot of added sugar. For coffee and tea, always include both regular and decaffeinated options, and offer milk and lower fat cream, so 5% instead of 18% cream. For breakfast, offer whole grains, breads, or bagels, limit muffins to lower fat varieties if being served, provide fruit, which can be whole if it's easier, or cut up, and offer meat and alternatives such as eggs and peanut butter instead of cream cheese. For lunch options, soup or sandwiches, consider sandwiches fillings that will support health and offer a variety of dietary needs. So things like real meat fillings such as turkey, ham, roast beef, or chicken. Offer alternatives such as hummus, grilled vegetables, lentils, or tofu-based options. Always offer condiments on the side, and opt for broth-based soups instead of cream-based whenever possible, and consider offering bean or lentil soups, as that will cover off a wide variety of options. If you're offering main dishes, always include one vegetarian option that includes a source of protein. Rather than just removing meat from the options, such as lasagna with no meat in it, consider something that offers lentils, beans, or tofu to ensure that you're meeting the needs of everyone that's available. Dessert, if you are planning to provide a dessert, considering offering fresh fruit on the side, or at the very least a fruit-based dessert such as a crumble, and offer smaller servings whenever possible. We always get the question, what do I actually serve? So we have these guidelines, they're wonderful, but what does that actually mean for me? So here's an example. If the meeting occurs mid-morning or mid-afternoon, one of the first questions to ask is, does it extend through a meal? Is it really necessary to have food or drink there? If it does, or if it does not extend through the meal, then offering water is probably a likely adequate nourishment for the people that are there. If the answer is yes, that you are going through a mealtime, or you're extending for more than 2 hours, then food or beverage may be required, and you want to aim to have the majority of the food offerings be choices that promote healthy eating. So here's an example that you can try. So for breakfast, if you were to serve yogurt parfaits, so offering low-fat Greek yogurt with fresh fruit, which can be sourced locally when in season, and low-fat granola, people can make whatever kind of option they want out of that. You can also have fresh fruit, again, whole or cut up. Whole grain bagels served with peanut butter. Coffee, regular and decaf, with milk, 5% cream, sugar and sweeteners. Tea, both regular and decaf or herbal varieties. And then water with lemon, lime. You've met all of the needs for a whole variety of people. So most of your special needs could be met with that menu. If you need support with planning menus or are looking for additional help suggestions, we can help. The dietitians at the health unit have worked with a whole variety of different restaurants, caterers, and planning meals ourselves. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit innovative or something that's different, or just a simple menu that you're not quite sure what to put together, we'd be happy to help you. The next topic is be green. So when you're looking at planning your meetings or events, make sure that you are considering how you're impacting the environment. Environmentally friendly meetings can save you money and the environment in the long term, and choosing locally sourced foods help to reduce the fossil fuel emissions that impact the environment. So here are some tips if you're looking to go green. Only print if necessary. Ensure it is double-sided to cut down on the amount of paper that's being used. Or even better, consider using a flash drive or USB, or make them available online or over email so people can bring their laptops with them. Always encourage people to bring their own mugs or water bottles. This way, whatever beverages you're providing can be used in those rather than serving in styrofoam containers. Provide food or beverages in bulk containers rather than single servings. Examples are things like salt and pepper, condiments such as salad dressing or ketchup, using those in large containers instead of individual packages. Always ensure that there's recycling containers for paper, plastic, and cans, and choose reusable plates, glasses, and containers whenever possible. Using municipal water and water jugs also allows for options such as flavored water to be offered, which can increase water intake and reduce sugar consumption. Only order the amount of food that you need. How many people are going to be coming, and expect that often there will be more food available than is actually required. Food wastage is a big challenge in many communities. If the room has enough sunlight, keep the room adequately lit and consider turning off overhead lights whenever possible.
Okay, so the planning well is always key. Things to consider as well when planning a meeting. Do we need to meet, or can the outcome be accomplished in a different way? Review the length of the meeting and format of the agenda. Is sitting required, and are food and beverage needed, as we just discussed? Are you giving gifts to presenters or incentives to your participants? Other things to consider: have you set your expectations for the meeting? Will the event be outdoors? Can you support local businesses and buy local food? And then finally, are you missing anything that you should consider?
Lastly, we have the Meet Well Charter. So this is something that the municipality of Chatham-Kent has already signed on to. Really just promoting the Meet Well guide and encouraging those 4 principles to be used whenever you are planning any type of meeting or event. If you would like more information on that, feel free to contact Michelle Bogart at the Health Unit. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know now. Otherwise, feel free to get in touch with us and we'd be happy to help out in any way possible. It looks like there's no questions, so thank you very much for attending and we hope you learned something informative today.